And we've tackled it exactly the same way you did. We're pretty well done or close to being done with most of the Windows servers, and we're on to the Linux, Unix, Solaris, etc. type servers. It's really the critical first step of any kind of consolidation these days, because if you're going to try to create a private cloud, you have to have a virtualization capability to do it, really. So it was absolutely essential for us. The cities, by and large, are probably very similar with the two comments that I just heard, that private clouds are going to be a lot more popular. However, having said that, Washington, D.C. here, of course, has gone with Google Apps. That got a lot of attention. When Vivek was still with the D.C., he did it there, and I know he's sort of brought the idea into the federal government. And most recently, the state of Minnesota just decided they were going to go with BPOS from Microsoft. So there's actually been some movement on the Office app side to do that, and with Exchange, etc. But generally speaking, most places I think are still staying with private cloud situation, because the model you were talking about, where you can get agencies together, and that's you got enough economies of scale to do it right there, right. So you might as well. Yep.
Well, yeah, and the agencies all just get along so well together, and it's just always immediately agree to just share everything. That always works really well.
There's the challenge.
Hey, been there, done that many times. But now the other thing that's going to be pressure on CIOs and agencies in the future is when the kids start entering the workforce, because to me this is like the ultimate cloud. This happens to be an Android, it could be an iPhone, or whatever you want it to be. But when they want an app, they just download it and have it in minutes. I mean, so that's the world that they're going to be expecting, down the road. Let's talk about benefits. I mean, everyone's talking virtualization, everybody's talking consolidation. What are some of the key benefits you've seen come out of this stuff? Let's start this time with Tom, in terms of benefits you've seen.
Obviously, as it relates to the wide area network, true cost savings. I think we calculated, true cost savings of close to $1 million per year compared to the status quo. When we were able to consolidate, we also increased the value. We took the minimum baselines of the agencies. Some agencies did wide area networking, security very well, and some of them had higher performance metrics. So we level set the highest benchmark and brought everybody up. So we had a lot of value, a lot of bandwidth, a lot of security. So that was, in addition to the cost savings. What's beneficial for us then is you roll out enterprise services. If you're dealing with less infrastructures, if you're rolling out an enterprise app or a service, it becomes a lot easier to do. Our new secretary came on board, and she immediately wanted a webcast to 17,000 employees in 600 locations around the country, and we kind of said, okay. So after we, picked ourselves up off the floor, we started working on that, and it became a lot of effort, a lot of challenge, because I've got 9 infrastructures. The saving grace was the wide area network, where that was similar to everybody, so that was one less hurdle, but the local area networks and all those locations became the big issue. So the more and more we can standardize at the various levels of infrastructure, then those types of services are more easily accomplished, less costly, you can secure them, et cetera.
Right.
I think those are some of the true benefits.
Yeah, it's interesting when people come to town, new people enter jobs, and their expectations and not understanding some issues with the government. When I first went to work for Tom Ridge right after 9/11, he said, in 30 days I want to be able to have top secret communications with every one of the governors in the state for emergencies. Okay, well, the equipment was easy. We used the National Guard and everything else, but I had to go back and say, excuse me, Governor, but we can get all that stuff in place, but do you realize that the governors are not going to be allowed to talk to you because they don't have clearances in many cases, and you know what? Many of them are not going to get clearances. So, I mean, the issue of the technology was a piece of cake, but the issue of how to get the communications done was the issue. Paul, how about you? Key benefits you've seen. I remember the IRS days where there were tremendous cost savings, but some other examples maybe?
Well, the key benefits for the city of New York with the consolidation that we're looking at is having tied it to virtualization. With the virtualization, you definitely have savings on manpower, and that's been the biggest savings for us in terms of the number of actual people you need to support servers. If you're reducing your physical server count, and sometimes you can reduce it as much as 90%, somewhere, let's say between 70% and 90%. then obviously you're going to have less people that you need to maintain those servers. So that's been one of the real hard benefits that we've been able to accomplish. The other benefit with the virtualization and consolidation is clearly with a focus around getting our data centers more green and sustainability. And so we've been able to demonstrate that we'll definitely reduce our carbon footprint in terms of having more, a more concentrated data center operation.
Mm-hmm. Hey, Tom, by the way, when you saved $1 million, did you tell OMB that?
No way.
Used to be a standard thing in the government. If you you had this like dual-edged sword, because if you announced all these savings you had, you lost it in next year's budget. But anyway, I can.
But that was the old OMB. See, the new OMB doesn't look at it that way.
Oh, yeah.
At least not with us, because there's not a lot of money to take there. So
we have a common theme coming from that end of the panel. Ken, what do you think in terms of benefits that you're seeing accrue to CBP and to your user community?
Same kind of things. We have a greatly reduced cost, reductions in the footprint. For example, on our ATS system, we're going from 120 racks down to 12. So it's a huge decrease in space, decrease in power, cooling, other activities, which is good because we're out of power, out of cooling, so you have to do those kind of activities. It's also a major decrease in the amount you have to spend on your integrators, because now you get things already together, already works. For our database appliance, one time we rolled it into the data center, until we actually started adding data, it was only 7 days.
Okay, cool.
So we're also spending about 1/4 the cost of those versus an S&B box. I'm getting 10 times performance. So benefit to our users is getting greatly improved performance and capabilities. We've taken some of our batch queries that were taking 45 minutes down to 35 seconds.
Oh, wow.
So you're giving much more greater capability for the folks to do things and those things. So it also means you can roll out capabilities much faster, those things. So reduce cost, reduce footprint, capabilities, chance to do more applications, to do things faster.
Yeah,
all key
great. That's why I love doing these thought leadership events, because, you get to hear about all the good things that are going on, because when you read the trade journals, all they print is the things that are going wrong. So it's good to hear about all the progress being made across the board. Let's switch now to the challenges. We alluded to it already, but let's, and Paul, since you've already teed that one up, let's start with you. What do you think some of the biggest challenges need to be overcome to get to where you want to be with consolidation?
Well, consolidation, there's a natural resistance to wanting to give up the control, right? So fundamentally, you've got to overcome that first. And the only way you can overcome that is by involving the folks that are going to now become users, let's say, rather than the owners, to be involved in some sort of governance structure where there is some sense that they're participating. Typically, that's not going to be enough, so the next thing you need is a really strong mandate from up top. So between the mandate and a governance process that allows people to participate, I think that starts to get you over the ownership issue. In places like New York City, which is heavily unionized, much more so than actually the federal government, you've got that whole issue to contend with too, because what happens is if you're going to eliminate positions, let's say as a cost reduction effort, they're going to immediately, the unions are going to go to the council people, et cetera, and you're going to get resistance there. So you need to involve those folks early on to recognize in some way that you're not going to eliminate jobs, or you're going to do it in a way that it's based on attrition or something of that nature, so it doesn't seem like people are being put out in the street. So those are probably the number one and number two issues. Cost is obviously an issue in terms of getting the budget you need. But if you have a strong arrangement, typically what we've been able to do in New York is essentially get the capital funding to do that. The cities and states work a little different than the federal government because we have capital budgets. You tend not to have capital budgets here. So we don't have to necessarily pull that over a one-year budget. We can essentially do a bond issue to get that money.
Yeah. Interesting. Ken, what do you think are some of the biggest challenges? I'm sure in DHS, since it's such a simple, complex place that just everybody jumps on board and says, oh yeah, let's go ahead and do this consolidation.
Absolutely. The biggest challenge, of course, is funding, and the fact that there's no money left in technology refresh budget, so you have to take that out of your hide. And since there's no money for doing those things, you're looking at things where you can find your return on investment that are in 6 or 8 months, so you can actually borrow your personnel funds to pay for the technology and get the money back to pay folks for your things. So that's a challenge. So you can't do some of the things, even though you know it'd save you a lot of money, you don't have the investment to make those things unless you can save some money first. Second thing is, actually second and third is both security and privacy.
Right.
Our major issues for us. So we're in the issue of consolidating our data centers for DHS into 2 data centers, getting those things together. We had different security standards, and so one group may have law enforcement information, we have trade data, other folks have privacy information issues. So getting past your security, your privacy issues are major challenges for you, both on the network side and the data center consolidation side. Otherwise, you just co-locate, you don't get the advantages of being able to merge the infrastructure and consolidate those capabilities. Yeah. And then the fourth thing is rice bowls. Right. Getting past the fact that somebody has to give up control and trust somebody else in terms of shared services.
Right. Yeah, that issue of privacy and security, we didn't make a focus on it here today because it would have taken us a whole another 2-hour session to get into those issues. But I remember Treasury, too, when I'd have Paul, the IRS, which had a huge effort on privacy, but then I also had Customs and Secret Service who were law enforcement who, wanted access to everything they didn't get access to. So it was like, you're playing like 2 different sides of that coin. It was very difficult to get everyone happy. But Tom, how about you? Big challenges over at Labor.
Yeah, second what Paul and Ken said, I think the biggest one is the turf battles, the control management. I can provide better service than you can. Why should I give it up? That's a big challenge. The acquisition process is a big challenge because if you want to standardize on a technology, you go through all the market research, you have all the agencies participate, maybe you select a technology and then your procurement folks, it's not good enough in the FAR, and you got to fight those battles. And if you even win that battle 3 years later, perhaps when you want to renew, they try to force you down another path. And wait a minute, I standardized over here, I don't want to keep changing every 3 to 5 years. So I think the procurement and acquisition FAR, I think the FAR stands in a way of a lot of us IT folks wanting to do things, whether it's cloud computing, whether it's standardization, and I respect what they have to live by, but I think some of the problems need to be resolved at the
I agree.
cycle.
I think procurement reform is definitely another needs to another look at it again. It seems like we've fallen back into the old school ways that we were years ago.
There was a cloud service that I wanted to go to. I'd have to find a small business or 3 sources. I would have to go through, in Vivek's idea, which is a great idea. I just drop the credit card down and I get the service on demand. I have it right away. It's overnight. It would take me 4 months to go through the procurement process.
Yeah, it seems like there was a time where performance-based approaches and all that were the flavor of the day. They seem to have fallen away again, and we're back to, in my opinion anyway, a lot of low bids win and things like that. And then unfortunately, the government doesn't get the A team; they get the B or C team, and then it turns into a environment that's not to anyone's advantage. Right. Let's talk about there is so much about cloud, managed service. Let's talk about, you're doing data center consolidations and so forth, but how do you know what you want to buy in that data center versus acquire as a service? We've heard so much of this managed service, fee for service. Paul, how about that in the state? Does the state buy stuff, or do you acquire it as a service?
It's not terribly different than the federal government. There's examples of both. With the 3 main, I'll call infrastructure projects that we have taken on, we're managing the consolidation. The government's managing that, and we're just using a systems integrator. On the major program for the network that we put in place, because we didn't have a lot of those skills, that was a managed service, more of a managed service with Northrop Grumman as sort of the overall, not only integrator, but actually operating that. And that tends to work in those situations.